Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be speaking to you here from the Berlin Film Festival. Being for people who haven't seen your film yet, Home Sweet Home, what can people expect?
Well, they can expect a journey with the main character, Sophie, who is a young woman who's a single mother, and she starts in the line of work of a home care worker in Denmark in a very small region in South Jutland. And it's very much a story about how our system works with the elderly care. What you go through every day taking care of the elderly citizens, but is also faced with huge challenges with time pressure and a system that can be very tough. I've worked as a home care worker myself, and it's a very demanding job. It's also very rewarding because you get to meet a lot of amazing people who lived their whole life and who've had so much life experience and who really wants to talk to you. Yeah, so you can expect emotional roller coaster rides because it's a tough job, but it's also very life affirming.
I think it's one of these jobs, one of these careers that, not only do we not see on screen, but is also often not celebrated, or given enough respect in society at large, because you can say, even doctors and nurses would be under similar sorts of pressures, but there's perhaps a different status given to work like that, whereas I think working in these homes, being a care worker doesn't quite ever reach that status. So why was it important to you, I guess, given the fact that you've worked that job before, why was it important to you to show this on screen?
Well, I have the same feeling, like it's really doesn't have a lot of focus. Once they do in Danish media, it's bad stories. It's something happens very specific with one person, and I don't think they get this respect that they deserve. They go into this job really wanting to make a difference for these people, and I think it's important to show how the work really is. And also these everyday heroes that go out, and they don't do this for the salary. They're not paid a lot of money, but they really try to do the best they can. And it really felt important for me to tell that story, because I didn't know a lot about it. When I said I was working as it was a part of my research, because I came up with the idea when there was an elderly couple that I've known for 20 years, and the husband, he developed dementia throughout a few years, and he couldn't recognize me when I visited them 2.5 years ago, and there was also some of his family members there, and he didn't recognize them, and he felt very anxious, and he didn't feel comfortable in his own living room. But when a home caregiver came in that he sees on a daily basis, he lit up and he became very happy, and he started making fun with her like he used to do with the rest of us. And I became very curious on this line of work because I didn't know a lot about it. I only knew a little bit about what I've heard in the media so far, and which doesn't give a respectful portrait of the work of a home care worker, and also of the elderly and the situation in Denmark and probably many other places in the world. But then I started doing research, working for as a home care worker for nearly 6 weeks, and I thought it was such a beautiful job, but also very challenging. And I knew I had to tell this story as authentic as I could.
And on that note, I think the level of detail that you go into in showing, I guess, sort of as a genre with social realism, it's, what level of detail to go into, whether it sometimes can become over-dramatized. So it's very difficult perhaps to just pitch it perfectly, because you're showing kind of, the repetitiveness of her day, of the work. But watching it doesn't feel repetitive because you're so drawn into her world and you're so drawn into her emotions and putting yourself in her shoes that you're really sort of hooked into watching her. So how do you think you achieved that?
I think primarily it was, the research did a big part of that, and also the collaboration with Jette Søndergaard, who plays the lead. She also did some job training as a home caregiver, and I knew if I wanted to make it as authentic as possible, I had to have the mundane. I had to do these everyday things and repeat them and show that this is a big part of it, but that there's a small development every day. Every day you get into this home of an elderly, you develop the relationship to these people, and you might even become like a family member to these people who doesn't necessarily get a lot of visit from their own family. I really like to find the drama in the everyday life, because I think everyday life is dramatic enough, you know, and it becomes more and more crazy in this world today, where we have to think about so many things. Like right now, a big focus in Denmark is with, you know, putting more money into military, which means that where do we get this money from? And they could take that from this sector and this, I really wanted to try to make it as authentic as possible. Like it had to feel like a documentary, even though everything is fiction, you know, everything is written down in a screenplay and they say the lines. And but we used also local people from the only professional actor is Jette in the film, and the rest is local people who never acted before. And they lived very different lives. Like someone has been a farmer, someone has been a nurse their whole life, and now they're acting in the film. And they also play a little bit more fragile than as a character than they are in real life. And but I think they can relate to these characters very easily, and I think that created this authentic feel of the film.
Jette's performance, I mean, you know, she's really carrying the film in the sense that we're following her every move. You know, she's in pretty much every frame of the movie.
Yeah.
But it's also a very restrained performance. You know, there aren't so many moments you can even kind of show so much emotion or have an outburst, but you can see it all there simmering underneath. So how did you collaborate with her to bring that performance to the core?
It's very much really her own work. That's why I always use her in my films. This is a third collaboration as a main character, and she has this ability that you really rarely see in any actors and actresses, that like she can tell stories with nearly nothing. You know, it's like something just happens in the present of her. You know, so many things, you can almost read her mind sometimes on screen, even though there's not a lot of drama in the scene, but she's just, you know, the way she goes into the scene and the way she uses her, you know, very small details in expression, or maybe even what's not being said. It's really a fine line, and we talk a lot before shooting, and while we do the shooting, you know, now we've done these collaborations for the third time, so we don't speak a lot like that on set, because we just know that what we really want to achieve, and I don't do a lot of takes either with her, because she's just really, you know, if I want to try something out, or if she wants to try something, we have this agreement that we can always say that she can come up and say, might be fun to also try it in this direction, and we do that. And sometimes I say maybe we should try one of these as well. And but we very much agree on it through the whole process. Also because she's so big part of the casting process, so she's always in the room doing the castings, and we usually do castings for 45-6 minutes for each potential actor coming in, and trying to make them feel comfortable. And Jette teaches them to memorize the lines, and they don't know when they come into the casting that they have to learn like 6 lines, and I come back in and I film them like I would do on the set. And in that way, yeah, it really becomes like very organic, the whole process in doing this.
And in terms of the takeaways from the film, I mean, I think what's amazing about the character is, despite everything she's going through, her exhaustion, and even what she's been told by her boss, you know, like, don't get too emotionally invested, it's going to be worse for everyone. Yeah. She really keeps her humanity. But that's obviously, you know, put into balance with seeing the impact it's having on her personal life, her dedication to this job. And so I think it's both an inspiring film, but it's also calling into question, you know, the system, and you know, can that be something, you know, can it stay that way in the long term, or does something need to change? And hopefully will make people appreciate the people who are making those sacrifices.
What I experienced when I was doing my research as a home caregiver, it was the people I talked to who living a single life with a. We had a lot of conversations about this being perfect culture. That many people live an Instagram life and says, I'm the perfect parent, I'm very good at my job, I do all these things. And it's a wrong way, it's a wrong direction in our society that we try to maintain this illusion in a way, because it's actually okay to not always be the best parent, because we're not able to do this with all the things we have to do in everyday life. We do have a work that we have to maintain, and you might have this line of work where you have to give yourself on a personal level, emotional level, and you become invested because you have with people to do who's in demand of your help. And then you come home and you have maybe children or maybe a family, and you have to take care of them as well. And at some point you might lose the energy. You don't have the energy to do this, and that's okay. Unfortunately, that's the part of our society. But I think I've been speaking to a lot of young couples as well, and who think it's really tough, you know, balancing work life and family life, and because there's this pressure from everyone else who might say, "Oh, are you doing it like this? Oh, well, we don't do that because we don't want to." And I think it creates a very wrong pressure in people's life.
Well, it can be. I think it's like two levels, isn't it? It's kind of on the personal level. You know, how can we have more empathy for each other, for ourselves? You know, sometimes having more patience with yourself.
Exactly.
And the importance of community. You know, I think it's the same in the UK, that a lot of elderly people are sent off to homes, or they live by themselves, they're not in touch with family. Yeah. But then on the other side, it's also putting pressure on the state, and, you know, looking at these systems and the funding. So it's, you know, there's some things that are within our control and other things that aren't. But that's something that, you know, so it's two levels that you could be wanting people to take something away from the film.
Yeah, definitely. I think what we experienced yesterday when we had the world premiere of the film, there's many great questions from the audience, and a lot of them that we didn't have time to answer, and then they came up to us afterwards. And I think the takeaways was that people maybe haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about these things. You know, one thing is your parents and your grandparents and that whole situation. Maybe you have a fear. I have a fear in a way. What becomes of my parents at some point? And also there was a lot of actually young, especially men, who came up and said, "I just got afraid of growing old myself," and I think it's because we don't talk a lot about this amongst people. It's like it's a taboo in many ways, but it's a big part of everyone's life. At some point, we all grow old, and we all have people who grow old in our life that we love. And and the other thing is the whole aspect of the welfare society that is challenged in this ways, in this line of work, where there's things that just doesn't work. It becomes like a business model in many ways. It must be frustrating to really wanting to do a big difference for these people in this line of work, but you constantly met with all these challenges due to budget restraints and creates this time pressure, and you don't really feel you can make this difference that you really want to do, and it tears you down. You know, you experience compassion fatigue. You can there's so many people who experience burnout in this line of work, and they should be given, you know, better circumstances to do this important line of work.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
Found it really moving. So yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks.